Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 295. Today is Sunday the 23rd of September 2018, and this interview is with Liz Bacel. Liz is a renowned entrepreneur and speaker at the cutting edge of fashion, retail and technology. Credited with driving the link between fashion and technology, aka fashion tech, Liz is a dynamic and forward-thinking entrepreneur who, amongst other activities, founded and sold Decoded Fashion. In this conversation with Liz, we discuss her journey with Decoded Fashion, some of the lessons learned within the fashion industry, and the constraints and opportunities in B2B. We also hear about the launch and the development of her latest initiative, TheCurrent, an innovation firm providing outsourced innovation for companies around the world, including the reverse pitch concept they've created. It's a tremendously stimulating conversation. Welcome to the Minter Dialogue podcast, where we discuss branding and all things digital. I am Minter Dial, your host, and you'll find the show notes on my eponymous site, minterdial.com. Enjoy the show. So Liz Bacel, lovely to have you on the show. I've been tracking you. We've had chances to hang out together. You've done many things, including founding and selling Decoded Fashion, and you're on to many new initiatives. So Liz, in your own words, describe us who you are and what you do.
Nice to see you here in New York, Minter. I can't believe I'm saying this phrase because you hear people saying, and sometimes it comes across annoying, a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Did I just say that?
Yeah, you're that. You're allowed to say you're a serial entrepreneur. So I want to dig in on Decoded Fashion, so we're going to get to what you're on to right now, later, more currently, should we say. So Decoded Fashion, that's how I first came across you, and it immediately appeared to me as a brand. It appeared to me as something that had been around for a long time. That's how I came across it. So I was wondering if you could just dissect how you managed to create that brand so quickly and make it have such an impact.
It was a fantastic story. I come from media. I was a journalist for 10 years. And when you look at 2010 is what I call the beginning of times for the industry as we see today. It was the first time the technology really took notice in fashion and beauty and retail, and it started to find a way in. And the world of fashion, retail, and beauty started hearing about these tech things that were going to change our lifestyle so much. If you think back then, we didn't have really iPhones. Like iPhones were version 1, and some people had it. And it's just so crazy. And there was so many things that were not part of our lives. Like there was no Instagram. Facebook was still nascent, and there was no commerce. And all the apps in my travels around the world covering tech, all of the apps that I came across were magenta apps created by man, saying that my wife liked fashion, so I built that app. And essentially what the app did is take a picture, share with your friends, should I be wearing this or should I be wearing something else? It was all very stupid. So I had an epiphany. We have a humanitarian crisis. It is a lot of smart people building dumb shit. And that was my business plan. My business plan was I'm going to take these people, the builders, the creators, in the room with the industry and ask them to just listen to the problems that this industry has. And my prediction was that the entire world of tech would turn to B2B. And I saw that being called fashion tech. And in 2011, I launched Decoded Fashion, and I decided to recoin that phrase fashion tech to be the name of an industry. That the core of it was B2B tech, was a technology that can affect an enterprise. And people ask me, what do you mean when you say fashion tech? It doesn't mean e-commerce businesses. It doesn't mean direct to consumer. It means any technology that has value in this conversation of lifestyle brands, consumer retail brands. I started with an event because it was an introduction. The first step was introducing this culture to this other culture. The first phase of it was a completely self-funded initiative. And we Decoded Fashion. I had never been to a conference before. when I created my own conference. So I did not know that food's supposed to suck and it's supposed to save money on a venue. So I launched at Lincoln Center with fantastic food. And I just kept that. I kept the aesthetics. I thought I had a lot of fun crossing the cultures, bringing a lot of tech people to a very fashionable environment, and then taking the fashion executives to a very techy content in a way that they could understand. So the big launch was in 2012, and that was a big event, 700 people, and that was introduction, right? It was introducing the fashion executives to these leaders of tech for the first time in their lives. The founder of Foursquare was there, Bonobos, and I remember explaining what Instagram was on stage, and Tumblr. Dave Karp from Tumblr was there. And it was really the beginning of everything. From that, we launched the first startup competition that has ever happened in the space. It was in London. It was in 2012 as well. And in 2012, I realized that we're sourcing winners from everything that's out there, but a lot of what's out there is direct to consumer. It's not really amazing because they never had access to contacts, to mentors in fashion, retail, and beauty. So they're trying to guess what needs to be built. What if we create it together? What if we do the world's first fashion hackathon? So that was February 2013. That was a mammoth hackathon. I will never do that again. It was 650 people. No one should do a hackathon with 650 people live.
Not first time anyway.
No one should, because you end up with 72 teams, which is a lot. No one should judge 72 teams. And we had to create a situation that there was a qualification round, and then 35 teams qualified, and then we judged those. It was a mammoth event. We had 5 finalists. Then we stopped the event there. We had 2 weeks to get them ready for Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week. So between the Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein shows, they actually walked the runway. We created this hacking setup that they pitched their creations to the head of the CFDA and Zach Posen, the designer, and Yurmin Coffee. It was so absurd because it was so cool. And it was the first time that I told the industry of technology, stop forcing down your techiness in the industry. You should be able to describe what you've built based on their perspective. You should not use any technical words at all, no jargon, nothing.
So it sounds like there are many things. One is you're moving the tech industry's approach, but at the same time, as I listen to you, it does seem to reflect the fact that in 2012, and as you know, I worked at L'Oreal, to 2009, beauty, fashion were as late as many other industries in getting into tech. And it's sort of ironic because a lot of them are FMCG and consumer facing. Yep. And so I wanted you to qualify that. Do you feel that that's an accurate statement? And if so, do you think that they've caught up? And then where should they be focusing the energies today?
So that curiosity, meeting the technology world, ignited a curiosity to have pilots and create moments together. And that made the startups start pitching to the comms teams, right? So every brand that did something with tech between 2011 and 2014, it was all comms first. It was about the press release, the impressions, are people going to talk about this? And startups, they actually needed contracts. Like, it's not just stunts. They need clients. If you do something that has to do with AR, are you going to do it again? You can't just do it once, right? You believe in the value of AR for conversion. And no one wanted to talk this way. The brands did not want to talk this way. Another thing that they've done that fed the gimmicks in the press release, unfortunately, is the incubators and the accelerators, which is a model that's supposed to be something deeper, long-lasting. When the brands touched that and they did it their own way, it was all for show. I challenge. I have friends that lead some of the top accelerators and incubators in the world for brands today. I still don't see the ROI. I see the ROI for the startups. They had a great time. They met some people. But even for them, they don't walk away with contracts. So I think it's not an honest conversation.
I hear you. And you were talking about how it was about moving away from B to C to B to B.
B2B is so cool.
It is. And I can't help but think that that is also really about culture change. Talk us through why B2B is cool and what type of culture change you see was needing to happen in the beauty and fashion world. And then we're going to get on to TheCurrent after.
Sure. So at that time in 2011, 2012, I saw the majority of startups that wanted to be known as being in this fashion tech space to want to be direct to consumer. They wanted to acquire users, right? Which is insane too. And not really understanding the cost of acquisition. Then some of them were chasing influencers, trying to create this game to chase this game that brands have to chase, but they're much more experienced on. And B2B, I'm a big ambassador of B2B because it's you focusing on what you do best, you being able to tap into someone else's audiences, some of the world's most incredible brands, and being able to bring value to them and have their audience see what you've built and be part of your story without you having to be bogged down with all the PR and marketing, a world that you don't understand anyways.
You were saying before that a lot of these companies don't even know their consumer, and that's sort of a frightening remark for companies that are parenthetically FMCG. So, just to tag on B2B, what I loved about B2B, and I worked in the hairdressing industry, was that you're not only trying to provide value to them, you're trying to provide value to people where you have a shared passion. And it's not distracted by also interested in fragrances or also interested in flowers. And also, yes, I could be interested in lots of other things, but in the B2B world, there's a sort of focused passion that's shared. So I want to get on to Liz to TheCurrent.
Sure.
And this is your latest baby.
Yes.
And it's I've been a subscriber of TheCurrent, and I recommend people listen to the podcast and download your newsletter. But describe to us what is TheCurrent, because it seems to be a little bit more than that.
So to talk about the evolution, right? So you are at 2016 when I left Decoded Fashion. The worlds of fashion, tech, and retail, and consumer brands in general, they were meeting tech and liking each other, but not knowing how to work together. And a lot of those conversations was falling apart. I was watching all of that and wondering how could we affect that. That seemed to be the new calling, the new calling for me. It wasn't just putting people in the room, was helping them figuring out a plan of action. And I had someone that I loved in London, Rachel Arthur, who was a journalist that I've read for many years. She actually started fashion tech before I did, which is not that many people out there. She's one of a handful of people in the world that said those words before I did. And we share that passion and frustration for being catalysts of actual action. And we talked about actionable innovation. How can we be agents of actionable innovation? So we looked at who is out there in the world telling brands, guiding them on what are the major trends today, what possibilities are there for innovation, not futuristic stuff, but immediate future, just like Wired magazine, right? Immediate future, next 2-3 years. How do you tap into them today? And who do you tap into it with? Another message that we're very passionate about is stop thinking you can do innovation on your own. That's a very idiotic conversation. It's not a hiring game. It's not being able to tap into funds to create divisions. That's not how this is done. It's about you understanding that you need outside players to ignite what you're doing that serves internal goals. So we think that every innovation team should have an external partner that scouts for them, that works for them, that it's the editor eyes for them. And with TheCurrent, we are the first agency to work that way. We're the first firm to work that way. So we're an innovation firm that is, for many incredible brands, their innovation team. We go to all the events around the world. We have about 6,000 startups in our database. There's 100 that we represent as agents, and we're growing that list. We only have 100 because we're only a year old. And what we do with these brands and the startups and all this knowledge is to guide them by flipping the pitch. We think that all the way up to now, 2018, technology meeting brand executives is opening up a deck and showing them a chatbot or showing them an AR or an AI or blockchain, if you want to go there.
No,
I can go there if you want me to go there. And you see that founder, maybe it was a cool guy or cool girl that you liked and you charismatic, you want to work with them, but still you don't close because they pitching you in a vacuum. What else is out there? Can you trust what they're saying? Does it really work? So those deals take too long to close because it's a very unfair conversation. It takes too much time to audit this conversation and bring it to a point of action. So we flipped that completely. We removed the tech from the room. We removed the founders from the room. And we talk about the themes. So VR, why? Why do you want VR at all? Why does it matter? How can that bring ROI for you? Oh, and then you realize maybe what we should be thinking about is AR. Okay, what kinds of AR? What are the uses of AR? What kind of outcome do you want? And we create a map very quickly. This takes an hour and a half, in which they call for specific startups in the room. And when that happens, it's magic. Right, it's a reverse pitch. It's a reverse pitch. So we did that for Gucci. We went over a list of partners, and we created a short list of 42 possible partners for Gucci. We sat with the leaders of Gucci, the 12 of them, and we went over our methodology on pretty much creating it's like testing the effect of each one of those partners based on resource, budget, and timeline. And then they decided like a handful that they wanted to meet, and they decided a specific number of the ones that they wanted to work with. Contracts were signed right away, done. The pilots are out there.
All right, so a lot of things I wanted to talk about that. One of them, and it's obviously a word that you share with me, is the need for strategic intent. And one of the issues I see a lot is that companies obviously want to do digital, are more or less aware of what's going on, but struggle to make the action to happen. And when you dig deeply into what they're trying to achieve, you find out that their strategic intent is not clear and certainly not always shared, which renders it very hard to make a decision afterwards, especially quickly. Yep. So when you talk about the Gucci example, if you can share how did that conversation ignite the 44, if you will? What was the relationship between how clear my understanding of my strategic initiative or strategic challenge is, and then the solution that can come out with it?
So Rachel and I have been in this world of fashion and tech since the beginning. So all the flavors and possibilities, from materials, supply chain, to software, to hardware, we've seen it all. And that really helps. From the other point, we also have monitored very closely every story that brands have created, right? Every single tech pilot that was out there. We have a database of thousands of stories about that. So we know what's been done, so we can do new things. And in that initial conversation, we don't talk about tech until we create something called the innovation brief. An innovation brief is a contract, it's an informal contract between the brand and us about what it is that they're looking for and what objective do they have. This sounds straightforward, but it's not. Many brand executives don't have a clear objective in their mind, and we want them to think more like closer to this, align with the CEO as much as possible. We want them to create stories that could be shown to the board, right? And that's how brands survive and create growth. And we think about innovation beyond tech for tech's sake. It's strategy. People love to say, I don't want to do tech for tech's sake, but they don't work strategically, so I don't know what they're doing, right? That's the only way. And one last thing, there is an erosion of trust. We know that from media, there's an erosion of trust. That's something that's talked about in so many different fields. But from the tech sake, any startup that's smart enough to draft a press release can get coverage somewhere, okay? And now the way journalists are paid and the way the media operates, no one has time to look under the hood anymore. So everything is a freaking illusion, okay? So more than half of the blockchain stories I've seen out there and people excited about and repeating them, they're not real. It's not even blockchain at all. It's blockchain-like, okay? There was a startup from Chicago that I met that's an artificial intelligence startup. They described themselves as artificial intelligence, and I looked at how it worked, and I said, I see the artificial, but I don't see the intelligence.
It's an if this, then that.
There's not a lot of strategic thinking, and there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction and hype. So the reason about yes, we are consultancy, but why the editorial, why the content, why the media sparkle and that? Because we're trying to show to everyone that we are editors. We actually take responsibility for our opinions. We have opinions, and we have experience to be able to brag that we're rarely wrong.
When you look at the onboarding, so let's go back to the Gucci example, only just to show the general gist, which is you've got outside support. You mentioned you have to have collaborations. You go and you find these external people, but how do you make the right choice? And I'm specifically thinking about the cultural fit between a large corporation like a Gucci and some startup that comes from Israel.
Oh, that's a good question. That's why we think the third-party model, the agent model, is so important. So when startups, they ask us what we are, we tell them we are CA for tech, right? We are talent agency, because you need that. I
can tell you've been out in Hollywood.
I know, right? I actually have. So the office in LA is lovely. You should come see it. We don't think we should leave the room until the rules of engagements are really clear. And many of our clients actually don't want us to leave the room until the project is done because they don't have the bandwidth or the culture internally to handle conversations with the startup. A startup has very few resources and a lot of needs. And a brand has a lot of needs and sometimes a lot of few resources. It's hard to tell. Some brands that look very large, they don't have that many resources. Right. And also brands, when they say Monday, 3 o'clock, they actually mean it. There's a whole chain of events that happen if that doesn't happen. And when startups hear Monday, 3 o'clock, they hear Monday-ish, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that cultural part that can make contracts fall apart. I know of many startups, they're very known in the market today, that brands have been telling us that working with them has been an absolute nightmare. But great technologies. So the most important thing is, first is the pitch, being able to have that ambassador, that person that understands the client and be the client facing. It sounds a little arrogant to say, but we can pitch tech better than any founder, right? Because we know the client better than anyone does, unless they come from the industry. If they come, then it's fine, I understand. But that rarely happens. So being able to have your pitch be reversed to be from the client angle, very powerful. So we do that. And the second point is having that player that understands what's at stake for both sides. We have one example. I wish I could tell you the clients. They're way too famous for me to be able to mention. But this client was cutting a deal with an AR company here from New York. Yes, augmented reality company in New York. Something really cool to be done in store. And in the contract for the pilot, the fashion brand wanted to draft the contract. They have teams of 20 lawyers, right? And the startup is just the startup and the founder. And they put a clause there that they own the IP of the pilot. And that if a VC of a round investing in the startup, they were to hold this contract, it could technically mean that they own IP of the startup. They didn't intend to cause harm for the startup, but that harm could have been caused. Sure. So we caught that and we protected the startup and said this cannot happen. So the agent, people don't understand sometimes how powerful it is to have an agent protecting your interests and to being your voice and pitching you better than you can pitch yourself.
Right. When you're working with your clients or the entrepreneurs and startups, to what extent does purpose enter into the conversation? Is it sort of nice to have? Is it for some important? Or is it relevant at a higher level? What do you think?
I think it's really important because purpose, as I see, is what we call the why, right? So many times the projects don't have a why.
So we talk about it, but are we having it?
It's just a what. More and more, we need to create moments to develop that purpose. And that should always come before the what. And I see all the time is conversations that start with the what. And they sound like, so, blockchain, what are we doing? Yeah. Totally. And then my question is, why? Why? There's a world of possibilities for blockchain years from now. But when you think about retail and fashion, there's only two applications right now today that could make any sense in the business way.
And those are?
Authentication and provenance. So for you to show a story of a supply chain because it aligns with your brand to bring extra value to your customer, to your consumer by showing that story, or for you to have something that's a collectible, if it's a streetwear, or if it's a luxury item, and authenticating that in a way that is non-adulterable.
Right, to get to trust.
To get trust that that's actually what I should be paying that much money for. And everything that's out there, like all the tags and all the QR codes, all that stuff is completely hackable. My daughter could hack that if she wanted.
And the second one is provenance.
Provenance is being able to have each partner that touched the production of this item to be certified by this platform that is foolproof that you are you. If we say that this was produced in Italy, to prove that was produced in Italy.
Again, it smacks of trust. So I want to finish on one.
The beers with the diamonds, showing where the diamonds are from. Yes.
And the blockchain has a little role. All right. So Liz, last question. You are a serial entrepreneur, as we said at the outset. What would you say are the lessons that you'd like to impart if you had in front of you a room full of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs leaving high school or university or wherever they're leaving? You don't have to have a university degree. What would you think are the things that drive your success and is something that's shareable and inspirational for the rest?
I meant, do they have to be young?
Good question.
Entrepreneurship with age. One thing that I see nowadays that's so exciting is the rise of the 40-year-old founder. In Japan, I spent a lot of time in Japan, and the startup community is full of them. A lot of the startups there, they're really exciting. They have very experienced executives that just got tired one day and decided to become an entrepreneur.
And just to finish on that, in Japan, are we seeing women entrepreneurs, or are they mostly men converted from the business?
Mostly men converted from the business. When I launched my first company there, Decoded Fashion, in 2015, I worked so hard to try to find female entrepreneurs to be part of the event. Any stage, I found one, and it gotten better. There's some great accelerators there, and like Samurai is one of them. And last time when I stopped by Samurai to visit, I saw women in the room. I got really excited. So Japan has transformed itself a lot in the past 5 years. But the rise of the older entrepreneur, it's still going on there, and I love that.
All right. So whether it's the older entrepreneur or the younger, what kind of lesson would you like to impart?
I think waiting for funding to fuel your dreams, I think that's bullshit. If you have something, you have skill, you have the skills to do it, you have a unique idea that you're passionate about, and if you have a team, if it's software, you're going to need to convince somebody to build it if you don't know how to build it yourself. If you have a team, think about what other areas of revenue that are closely related to what your goal is, and see if you can tap into that revenue. One good example that I have is a trend startup that I'm an advisor of. It's a data analytics startup, and they trying to build this platform, but they really, really good about anything data. They fantastic experts on that. So they created a side consultancy to fund themselves. And it really worked. They got some angel money, but they didn't need an A round for a long time.
Sounds like Gary Vaynerchuk.
maybe they got inspiration from him. But every company I had was self-funded. With TheCurrent, I had some angel funding from friends that I wanted to be associated with. But there is something very heartbreaking about you putting the beginning of your dreams into somebody else's hand, and you're in this very delicate stage of prototyping and alpha for you to try to convince someone that you're capable, and having people over and over question your worth and question your credibility. I think that's something that should come later on, when you have a little more self-assurance that you know exactly what you're after, that you're able to test a couple of things, and now you just want to scale. In that game of growing, by all means, go after the money and go grow it, right? If you cannot self-fund. But if you don't have a prototype, I think you need to be very creative and not put yourself into the funding game too soon, because it really breaks your heart sometimes.
Beautiful. Liz, how can someone follow you? What the best ways to track you down and catch up with everything you're doing at TheCurrent and everywhere else.
Yay, we are obsessed about meeting people from all around the world, different ideas, learning what's popping up. If you have something that's launching, let us know what it is. I'm very easy to find. I'm very Googleable. You can find me as Liz Current on Instagram or Twitter, or just Liz at thecurrentglobal.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Liz. Lovely to see you, and I can't wait to catch you at South by Southwest.
Thank you so much, Minter.
Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes and other blog posts on minterdial.com. If you enjoyed the show, please like the handy Facebook button, or better yet, head over to iTunes to give a rating and review. But first, relax to Josh Sachs's Finger Paint.
Oh, fill me with all your colors, any different way to rid me of the gray and heal with all your imperfections that you mention